Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. This week we pick up at St. Catherine's Island. First thing we do is we cross St. Catherine Sound. From there we continue up the Intracoastal Waterway and we go through the dreaded Hell Gate. From there we continue up to Thunderbolt, where we spend one night anchored right next to a marine research facility. For the next morning we go through Thunderbolt itself, which is really cool, and then we cross the Savannah River and continue up the ICW until we're knocking on Calibogue Sound's door. And we anchor right next to Calibogue Sound in one of our favorite anchorages, which is Bull Creek. I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. After spending a couple of days hunkered down behind St. Catherine's Island, waiting out some high winds, we decided to get back on the road again. And it was a very nice day. There was a light breeze. We were able to sail for some of the day. And, you know, this year we left Florida a month earlier, and it's really had an impact on the weather. You know, I wish some of that global warming would hurry up and get here. That's a joke, that's a joke. But, you know, we are still running into winter weather. You know, in the winter time, typically it can be a lot windier than in the summer. Summer's generally more calm, and now these are generalizations. But when cold fronts come through, they usually drive high winds, and that's especially true up around Chesapeake Bay. That's why we try and leave Delaware City in the beginning of September, so we can get through Chesapeake Bay before those cold fronts start coming through, because when the cold fronts start hitting the bay, it just gets nasty out there. And we've had to deal with that nasty before, and we'd prefer not to deal with that nasty. So that's why we leave so early in the fall. Now, we did leave earlier in the spring this year, and it's kind of coming back to bite us in the ass a little bit. We are running into cold fronts, so we're having to hunker down and wait more often, and just generally it's colder. You know, on most days when we get up, it's in the 40s, which is just chilly. You know, it's EJ doesn't have a covered, you know, enclosed cockpit, so you're very exposed to the weather, and you know, just a little bit of wind out on a lake or a sound or a river, even for that matter, just it can chill you to the bone. And we've had some pretty cold mornings, so next year I don't think we'll be leaving as early. You know, my thought was that we could kind of lollygag, we could take our time and just slowly make our way north. And I thought, well, we could just, you know, explore some new areas, which we have, and we could just take our time. I figured it would take maybe 3 months if we really lollygagged, and I don't honestly know with the weather if it's worth it. I think if I did this again, I mean, I'm definitely going to do this again, but I think next year we'll hang out for that additional month in Florida. We'll get another month of better weather in Florida, and when we head north, it'll be a lot nicer. Now, we'll still get some cold weather, of course. We did last year, but it's been way worse this year. And that month seems to really make a big difference. On our way to Savannah, we did go through Hell Gate. Now, Hell Gate is a very dynamic area. When you go through, your direction of travel changes in relation to the current 4 times as you make your way through Hell Gate. So it can be a little bit tricky if the current is ripping and you're in a low-powered boat like EJ. You really have to trust your nav software, and when it says you're traveling in a certain direction, believe it, because you're going to be sliding sideways the whole time. Now, the channel to get through is very narrow. When you go through, you have to nail it, especially if you go through at low tide. You can actually see through the water if you've got a good pair of polarized sunglasses, and you can see the sandbars on either side. So you have to nail that channel. And when I went through, I guess the crew, when we went through this year, I saw a minimum depth of 10.3 feet, but that was when the tide was plus 4.13 feet. So at low tide, it's about 6 and change. So you do have to be careful going through there. You can make it through at low tide, but it is shallow. Now, I've made an entire video on Hell Gate before. I'll put that link down below if you want to know more about it. And this year, this year I'm also doing something different. So at the end of the year, I've been recording every spot in the ICW. I know where most of the shallow spots are, but this year I've actually been writing down where those spots are and what the depth is and what the state of tide is. So if I've had a couple of people reach out, and one person next year is going to be going down the ICW for the first time, and then another gentleman is retiring soon, so he's going to be going down in a couple of years. So every year going forward, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to make a 2025 ICW debrief once I make it back to Delaware City. That way in the fall, when people are going through, they'll know exactly where the shallow spots are, what the depth is, and what the state of tide is. And you can use that to determine whether you can make it through an area or not safely. And there are actually a couple of shallow spots that EJ can't make it through at low tide. So that'll just be a little bonus for people that are interested. The next morning we got up early and we headed through Thunderbolt, Georgia. Thunderbolt is really cool. Some of the largest sailboats that I've ever seen are always in Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt Marine is there and they do work on very expensive ships. They can handle big projects. So that's why we see a lot of large sailboats there. And plus sailboats can get in there from the sea without going under a bridge, which sometimes is a limiting factor. So the first sailboat we saw, I actually didn't catch the name of it. It was around 100 feet, I would guess, but it was a very, very large sailboat. There was a cat crawling around on it, which was kind of funny. But then as we got up closer to Thunderbolt Marine, I did catch a very small glimpse of Thalia. Now I didn't get any, I got a small grainy video, but you really can't see any of Thalia. But Thalia is an absolutely gorgeous boat. It's a 159-foot steel sailboat. She's a ketch, so she has 2 masts and is just absolutely gorgeous. She's got a beam of 31.8 feet. And she has an 1100 horsepower engine, a Caterpillar engine, which is absolutely ridiculous. You know, EJ has a 42 horse and Thalia has an 1100 horse. Her cruising speed is 11 knots and she has a maximum speed of 14 knots, which is just absolutely ridiculous, but so cool. And I think she sold, or I was trying to do some research and there's some conflicting information, but I think she sold around 2014 for $9 million. And she was manufactured, I believe, approximately 10 years before that. So new she had to be at least 15 to 20 million, which is unbelievable for a vessel of that size. She's just a gorgeous, gorgeous sailboat. I'll put some photos up here of her. But another notable boat, we did pass Aria. And Aria is notable because she is from Wisconsin. And it's very rare that you see boats from Wisconsin on the Intracoastal Waterway. I've only seen a couple of them ever. And Aria is one of them. She's 87 feet and just an absolute beautiful boat. Large, very large sailboat. So going through Thunderbolt is always a treat. And, you know, one of the reasons why these large sailboats are there is because they have very tall masts. A lot of them are over 100 feet tall, their masts. And that makes it so they can't go down the Intracoastal Waterway. One thing you may not think about is you do have to go underneath the bridges. There are a ton of fixed bridges along the Intracoastal Waterway. Most of them are 65 feet at high tide. So you really don't want to have a mast that's over 65 feet. Yes, you can still make it under all the bridges, but you have to time it to go through at low tide, which is really kind of impractical, or it's very difficult. I know some people have gone through with 67-foot masts, but I wouldn't want to try it. Timing all the bridges with the tides must be a nightmare. I've heard people on the radio talk about their antennas scraping on the bridges. So, but Thunderbolt is a spot where there are no bridges between the inlet and like Thunderbolt Marine. So these large sailing vessels with massive masts can get in there, whereas they can't go down the ICW. So if you are planning on going down the ICW, make sure your mast is under 65 feet. It'll make life a lot easier. After taking in all the eye candy in Thunderbolt, we made our way up to the Savannah River, and I think this was the first time we were able to cross the Savannah River without running into a tanker or a container ship, which makes things a lot easier. We just shot across, and once you get to the other side, you are officially entering South Carolina. From there, it's a very short trip up to one of our favorite anchorages, which is Bull Creek, and that is located right on the edge of Calibogue Sound. Once we got there, it was time to get the crew ashore, so we made our way to one of the shell beaches and played around for a little while. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I wouldn't make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, Matthew Sponton, Peter Allen, and Natalie Linehan. Thank you guys so very much. Your support really means the world to me. I do have one legacy patron member, and her name is Joan Linbo. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We really miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to our Patreon page where you can sign up. And there are hundreds, literally hundreds of extra videos and photos of our travels, and I try and keep everything there up to date and post at least once or twice a week, so it gives you a little peek behind the curtain. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That'll help us out more than you'll ever know, and that actually doesn't cost you anything, so hit that like button. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.